The industry's poster child for survival horror is in a state of flux. Resident Evil 4 set a new standard for third-person shooters and brought the series back from the brink of irrelevance. Resident Evil 5 attempted to mimic games it failed at replicating RE4. Fans are confused on where it's all headed, and they're looking at Resident Evil Revelations to shine some light on the path to the future of the series. Can this handheld installment scare up a positive response?
A little friendly partner swapping should keep us on our toes.
Roger that.
I found the target, but she's a zombie.
Isn't that always the case?
Chris Redfield is missing, and the BSAA sends Jill Valentine and her brutish partner Parker Luciani to investigate. Eventually, the clues lead the pair to a ghost ship set adrift in the Mediterranean called the Queen Zenobia. The derelict vessel was once a shrine to opulence, but now it's overrun by a mutation of the T-virus. Designed to be an oceanic contaminant, the floating time bomb becomes the primary location for the game's festivities. Shadow corporations are exposed, and warring military factions clash as seen from the perspective of several different pairs of BSAA agents. Their stories intertwine, and sometimes in unpredictable ways.
We should be okay as long as we work together.
The dark, creaky ship is a perfect location for Resident Evil, but the game's militaristic bent undermines the setting. Perhaps it's a product of eventually having to justify why zombies and their ilk exist, but this direction intrinsically makes it less scary. The lack of zombies in favor of forgettable albino ooze creatures doesn't help. It's just not as creepy as it could be, despite the deftly handled translation. Yet taken as an action game, its episodic plot is rarely predictable, competently written, and served with a very thin slice of cheese.
Great. So we have no idea really who we're up against.
Exactly. And that's a piece of the puzzle we really need. There's something you may want to see.
Revelations is a return to the series' prior design, as the Queen Zenobia essentially doubles as a mansion. It's a maze of corridors and rooms governed by keys that you collect as you clear one room after another. Backtracking is prevalent, and by the end of the game, you'll know the ship's map by heart. Breaking up the monotony are missions where you take control of other agents to help fill in the plot's cavities. Typewriter saves have been replaced by sometimes brutal checkpoints, and with no way to load a prior save, it's possible to find yourself on death's door with no green herbs in sight. A big part of the game is weapon building at crates scattered about. You get the stock shotguns, machine guns, and handguns, but you collect parts through the campaign that you can upgrade them with. Fire rate, stopping power, and even special abilities like double firing can be imbued to your armament. By the time you reach the end of the game, you'll have an emotional attachment to your 3-gun arsenal. Grenades are effective, but scarce, and a new scanning gadget called Genesis helps pluck hidden items and gather clues. Using it obsessively is recommended, and practically impossible to resist. Resident Evil has been laying the foundation for multiplayer for quite some time, but few examples have been as enjoyable as Raid Mode in Revelations. Essentially a cooperative RPG that you can play online, locally, or by yourself. It has a Phantasy Star Online vibe to it. As you blast your way through campaign environments strewn with enemies, there's a leveling up structure that unlocks new weapons, or you can spend the BP you earn in the campaign at the store. You have the option to play with randoms from around the globe or folks on your friends list, and the rewards are laid out almost like a breadcrumb trail to heaven. It's top shelf as far as 3DS online experiences go, and almost worth the price of admission alone.
Jesus, no one could have lived through that.
The expectations for handheld game content is rising by the month, and Revelations has taken this to heart. Spanning around 10 hours, the campaign is every bit as lengthy as its console siblings. A Game Plus feature and the long-lasting addictive raid mode guarantee plenty of pounding pulse per penny.
I don't want to jump to conclusions. I need more intel.
Revelations is all about gunplay. There's just one puzzle in the entire game, and it's repeated multiple times. The good news is that it gives you just about every conceivable way to fire off rounds. You can choose to go first person and play it like a shooting gallery, or go for the over-the-shoulder view. Aiming is handled well by the circle pad, but quickly readjusting to address enemy placement can be arduous, even with the quick turn. It also features Circle Pad Pro support and gyro aiming, which works remarkably well. Just about everyone will be able to customize a scheme that works for them.
I'd almost guarantee it.
There is some strategy to the combat. In the early going, ammo conservation is a must, so learning to stagger enemies and then follow up with a chargeable melee attack helps. With no cover system and few places to hide, it's easy to get trapped in a corner and overwhelmed. Eventually, you'll utilize the old tactic of running away, spinning around, squeezing off rounds, and repeating. An awkward implementation of strafe firing doesn't diminish the intensity of trying to land one more bullet before an enemy strikes. Whether you're playing the campaign or raid mode, you're always with a partner. Neither option allows you to share ammo or weapons with one another, and based upon the effectiveness of the computer AI, that's probably a good thing. Rarely dropping enemies, your comrades are idiots. They get in the way at the worst possible time and aren't even smart enough to act as a pathfinder to the next objective. They're essentially worthless, save for acting as a decoy to draw enemies away.
Ryder, I'm gonna go check out the terminals. You have fun with these.
The gameplay is rounded out by turret segments, a surprising amount of swimming, and a few boss encounters that almost all require the same strategy. As a mix of old and new concepts, the gameplay in Resident Evil Revelations maintains tension, but forces you to manipulate its inadequacies to proceed.
I saw these in the video.
After playing Resident Evil Revelations, there is little doubt that the 3DS is capable of big-time production values. Though the environments rarely sprawl, the level of detail in each room makes turning every corner a dicey proposition. Character models look great, despite the off-putting lack of facial animation, and the lighting is the best we've seen on the system. Elaborate CG sequences hold the high standards of the franchise, and while the 3D doesn't add much to the gameplay, the ability to crank it up beyond Nintendo's intended max produces some convincing results. The few complaints include flickering, occasional frame rate drops, and awful loading times not so cleverly disguised by door animations. Featuring 3D sound, the audio is excellent. The simplest rustle will put you on edge, while the half-creature, half-human cries actually build sympathy for the antagonists. We highly recommend playing with headphones to appreciate its full impact. The voice acting will only elicit a few snickers, and overall, Revelation sets a new high mark for presentation on the 3DS.
Feels like something's gonna jump out.
What you have here is a full-featured Resident Evil release squeezed down onto the 3DS. It sacrifices little due to the hardware, with its most glaring faults a result of development decisions. The meaty campaign is short on scares, but well-designed and engaging, while the raid mode will sink its claws into you just after a couple missions. While tiptoeing the line between old series staples and its latest evolutions, Resident Evil Revelations proves that what's old can be new again.
We did do everything we could, right?
I hope we did.